Welcome back to the World Trade Webcast. Our guest this week is Charles Dittrich, Vice President of Regional Trade Initiatives for the National Foreign Trade Council. We're talking this week about the policy implications of the midterm elections on the nation's international trade agenda. Chuck, today I thought we could talk more about Ex-Im Bank reauthorization. During its 80-year history, the Ex-Im Bank has been reauthorized 16 times, all with broad bipartisan majorities. But this year, Ex-Im reauthorization became a political football, and the bank only got a short reprieve in September from Congress, with its current charter set to expire in June of 2015. What does the new reality in Washington mean in terms of the bank's future survival?
Well, Ex-Im has always, there's been broad bipartisan support, but it's never been an easy effort. There's a lot of misconceptions about Ex-Im, and I think the way it's been treated shows what happens when you focus on, your political philosophy as a concept rather as the common sense practicalities of governing. And the Ex-Im is an organization that's an independent government corporation. It contributes at the end of the day, each day, it contributes more to the government treasury than it takes. It's a moneymaker. And what it does is it gets paid back. Like any bank, it's a business and it makes a profit. But what it does is it allows American companies who ordinarily wouldn't be able to get the financing and the working capital to go into some markets. It enables them to do that because, quite frankly, the private banking sector is not serving those markets for the United States. Not only that, but it helps smaller U.S. businesses serve as the suppliers to the bigger companies. We hear that, this is a bank of a handful of major multinational corporations. But the fact is that each of those major corporations, be it Boeing or Caterpillar, that make amazing products right here in the United States, they employ hundreds of smaller U.S. suppliers. And that happens because of what the bank provides.
And certainly, to some extent, I think it's a rising tide carries all ships.
Exactly.
Something that you alluded to earlier in the week also is, a potential competitive disadvantage if we don't have the Ex-Im Bank with nearly 60 other export credit agencies around the world. What does that do from a competitive standpoint if the United States no longer has a similar agency?
Well, if the secret weapon for U.S. companies to compete is if Spain and China and France and Germany had the view of the U.S. Congress, our businesses would be in great shape. But unfortunately, they don't. They're very forward-looking. They're looking at it strategically. They're providing the financing and the export credits. They're joining, they're teaming, they're looking at how projects are structured in a global value chain, and they're working together to make sure that their companies, the companies of those countries, have a piece of bigger projects. And I think that's not going to stop. That's just going to become more competitive. We're seeing how China is moving into larger and larger markets with financing. We're looking at Latin America and the need for financing there. And the fact is that if Ex-Im closes its doors, that means many companies in each district of a Congress are going to close their doors too.
I think you're absolutely right. And to use a Washington term that gets bandied about a lot, let's talk about the optics on the Hill. And again, particularly, we talked about this earlier in the week, particularly with the Tea Party conservatives having really gone after Ex-Im. How do you change those optics and maybe get some of those more conservative members to see the value in this for job creation, for American companies, and for the economy as a whole?
The only way that you can do it is with time and with effort and with education and engaging and having a serious conversation. And not just from, hearing from us in Washington, but when they go back to their districts, they need to walk the factory floors. They need to visit the services that in their district is benefiting from either being a supplier to a larger customer of Ex-Im or how smaller companies are using XM to get into some really interesting markets. And, the fact is that Congress changes in the House every 2 years. We have elections in the Senate every 6 years. So that education process never stops. But once you find common ground, you have some really powerful allies in Congress to keep that export machine running. And that's what we're hoping will finally prevail. But we need to get it reauthorized. That's the key.
And let's hope we can find common ground. I think that's a terrific perspective. So that's
I just want to put one little plug in, if you don't mind.
Please.
I have a colleague organization here in our office that's shares space with us. It's called the Coalition for Exports, the Coalition for Employment Through Exports, CEE. So if you Google Coalition for Employment Through Exports, you'll learn all of the details of the importance of XM and OPIC and TDA and these agencies, and how so many U.S. companies are using them, and how that organization and all of us are trying to educate Congress on just the facts of the issues.
I think that's a really good point, and thank you for sharing that with us. We'll also show that URL here to our viewers as well. So that's all the time we have today, but please join us again tomorrow as we continue our discussion with Chuck Dittrich on the implications of the midterm elections on the nation's trade policy agenda. For our latest schedule of upcoming webcasts, subscribe to us with any of the links below and bookmark this page. All of our previous webcasts can be found right here at thinkglobal.com/webcast. And thanks for watching.
Thanks, Greg.